Hi guys, it's Sunday. I thought I would come on and talk about tonight about marriage. I'm not here to preach or tell you that I have the perfect marriage or anything, but I figured I'd come on here and kind of let you know where we've come from, where we've gone, what we've needed to do, and how we've done it. And our marriage by far is not perfect in any shape or form. So that's why I feel like I can get on here and talk to you about it, because I don't come from a place where we've never not had struggles, or that we've never not been close to wanting to call it quits and things like that. And so that's why I figured I could come on and just kind of talk about what we've gone through, what we've done, and hope that it might help you with yours or your relationships or whatever it is. So for a few months now, I finally got my husband to the point where he agreed to counseling. I don't know, for some reason it's a little bit harder for men to agree to it. It seems like I've talked to a lot of my girlfriends, and they have said that it's been kind of harder for them to get their husband on board to do it. But so anyways, so we've been going to counseling for a while. He had his own struggles and things that he needed to work out, that he finally got to the point where he felt like he needed the extra professional help about it. And I had my own things too that I needed help with in my past, that have kept me from being able to be the wife that I need to be. It's unfortunate, because the more and more I'm around people in my business and stuff, the more and more I realize how the world is under attack, or how marriages are under attack by the world and stuff, and how there's so many, the divorce rates have become so high. Getting married has become not as much as an option for people, because a lot of people have had their parents divorce and kind of fear that they might have the same thing happen, so it's kept them from wanting to get married. A lot of people struggle with commitment nowadays, and that's super, super unfortunate, because marriage can be absolutely amazing and wonderful, and it can also be a really big struggle too. And so we just had our 14-year anniversary, and I've known my husband since I was 17, and kind of a little bit of how we were, how we met and everything is, when I was still a teenager, I was still trying to get my my diploma in high school and everything. I was going to night classes, and because I was behind and had dropped out of school for a little bit. My husband's from Idaho, and he came down here to get to know his biological dad, and started working for him for a little bit. Well, I was a waitress at Village Inn, and my husband, his name's Jake, he came in to meet his dad there to have lunch, and it was on a day that I didn't normally work, but he came in and was very, very, very flirtatious. I had just gotten out of a really hard relationship, and I was not really in a place to want to meet or try something new. I was done with dating for a while, and Jake actually kind of was too. But when he was in the parking lot, he had the feeling that he would meet his wife there, and so all the girls, everybody at the restaurant kept saying, "Oh, he's gonna ask for your number, he's gonna ask for your number." And I said, "Oh, I know, can you make sure that you go check him out when it's time for him to pay?" So when it was time for him to go, I couldn't see him, figured that somebody else had cashed him out. So I decided to go back to the front, and he had been peeking out of the bathroom to see if I had come back, and when I did, he ended up coming to the front of the restaurant and started talking to me and flirting with me. Well, all of a sudden his dad says, "Can he get your number?" And I thought in my head, "Oh, I just don't want to do this." And I had the feeling come to me, just try one last time. And so I did. I gave him my number. He called that night. We ended up having our first date, and we ended up getting married 3 to 4 months later. super, super, super quick. And so I got married at a really young age, and he's 4 years older than me, so he was in his 20s, and so it was a little bit different. But we both came from totally different backgrounds. He was raised different than I was. He didn't know about insecurities or how to communicate or things like that. And growing up, I went through a lot of counseling because I had some abuse done to me as a kid, and so my parents wanted to make sure that I had that under my belt and to be able to have that there to help me. So as I grew up, we were told that you had to communicate. Well, when my husband and I got married, it was probably one of the worst 2 years of our marriage. It seriously, honestly was. And you would think that at the beginning of your marriage it's supposed to be all dandy and roses and everything great. Well, you're getting to know each other, and you're learning how the person is like when they're sick, when they're happy, when they're angry, when they get stressed. And so it was not a fun time for us. And many times I'd have to admit I wondered if we would even make it through our first 2 years of marriage. Then we started having kids and stuff, and when you add kids into the picture, it becomes more about them and not about you guys. And so anything that you didn't learn or take care of in the beginning of your marriage before kids came along, it does not go away. It just continues to stay there and make things kind of difficult. So as years went on and everything, things just kind of got swept under the rug and weren't figured out or resolved, and sometimes we resented each other for things. I had a lot of insecurities from past relationships, and he had a lot of insecurities about himself from his growing up and everything. So putting those two together really, really made it hard. Didn't mean that the last 14 years have been pure heck or anything. We've had great times, and I really love my husband and he loves me, but we've had some really rough times too. And so we never tried professional counseling. We had somebody through our church and stuff kind of counsel us and help us, but they're not trained professionally to really be able to help in that direction. So that's about all we got, all these different years and everything, and it made it super, super hard. Okay, I saw my friends all around me constantly getting divorces, having struggles, and then I had friends that seemed like they had the most perfect marriage. And I would ask them questions like, well, does your husband do this, or does this happen? And they would say no, and they would say that they never fought and everything like that. And that made me super insecure because I thought, ooh, maybe we just have one of those odd relationships where ours is going to fail and theirs is doing really good. And if we don't do this, that, or the other, then, we're not going to make it. And so I set up all these unrealistic goals and thoughts in my mind and expectations and stuff, and made it super, super hard, so that when my husband would try something, in my mind, if I set an expectation up that he didn't even know about, and if he didn't make that expectation up, then it made it to where he felt like he failed me. And then I felt like he failed me because I had these high expectations of what a husband was supposed to be like and what a wife, was or wasn't supposed to do. And so as we've gone through counseling and stuff, we've learned quite a few things, and here's some basic things that I'll share with you that, that we've learned throughout the months that we've gone through intense counseling with our awesome counselor. So our biggest thing in our marriage, our hardest thing, is connection. There's different ways to connect, not only to be intimate, but also like to connect with each other about each other's jobs or each other's interests, or romantically connect and things like that. And so that has been a super, super hard thing for us is to connect that way. And so, hi, Nikki. And so she's told us to work on it. And she told us that months and months and months ago. And now she's retouching up on us on how to learn how to connect. So some of the things that she's told us about, because I didn't quite understand what she meant by that, is, you know, when you're married to your spouse, you need to treat them as if you're dating for the first time. And she reminds you of, you know, when you were dating, what were you at a point in time where you wanted to be with them every single second, every moment of the day? And you think back about it, it's like, yeah, we were always together. There was not one waking moment where we weren't. She's like, well, did you spend hours and hours on the phone at night and didn't care about having to wake up the next day to where you'd be so tired to go to work? And you're like, yeah, we'd stay on the phone for hours. She'd say, how about times where in between a lunch break for him or something like that, would you guys just hurry and quickly meet up just to get a kiss on the cheek or the lips or whatever, and not care about you drove all the way out on the other side of Salt Lake and just for a kiss or to have lunch with each other? And then she's like, so do you still do any of those things now? And we thought about it. We're like, no, it's a little different because we have kids now. And she's like, nope, it's not different. It shouldn't be different. So our homework assignment that she gave us was spending 30 minutes, at least 30 minutes every single day, and setting a specific time of when we're going to connect. And that could be anything. It could be talking about something that's bothering us with each other. But the hard thing about that is you can't get angry with each other about that. So that one's a little bit difficult for us. Like if we're talking about bills or we're talking about work or something stressful, that easily can get you in kind of an argument because it's a stressful thing. So maybe part of the time that you want to reconnect with your spouse you might not want to do it on talk about stressful things, but making sure that you spend 30 minutes a day when your spouse comes home from work or something, that you make sure that you look directly at him or her and give them a hug and a kiss and acknowledge that they're there, because that's super important. She says even calling each other up and saying, hey, where are you at during the day? Can I just hurry and bring you a drink? Or meeting up for just a few minutes and giving each other a kiss, or going somewhere where the kids can't find you in the house or out in the backyard, where you just lay down on the grass and look at the stars and just kind of talk about silly, funny moments. Those times are so super important to reconnect because it reminds you of why you're married to the person, why you care about them and love them, why you're still together even throughout all the hard times. Because guys, flip, in 14 years, I would have to say I've been through so many dang hard things, but you know what? I wouldn't want to go through it with anybody else but him. He's been my rock when I've had super hard struggles, and I've been able to be his rock. And boy, when we're both having our struggles together, it's made it super hard, but we've always been able to get through them together. Another thing is too, she talks about how to stay in your lane. And what that means by that, I feel, is you know, worrying about what you're doing and not worry so much about what the other person is doing. Tap into what you can change and what you can do better, because it's so easy for us to find the faults of others, but it's not possible to change what that person's doing. They have to change it themselves. And so it's super important for us to be able to kind of do a self-check with ourselves and stay in your lane. Like, you know, don't let those things bother you. She talks about driving on the road. When you're driving on the road and you're headed somewhere and you hear somebody's music in the car next to you and it bothers you and everything, there's ways to direct your attention towards something else by easily rolling up the window. And she connects that with things that we do. We can sit here and we can allow ourselves to be bothered by the things that our spouse is doing or our significant other or whatever, or we can choose to focus on what we need to do on a daily basis by simply as waking up in the morning and thinking, okay, whatever today brings, I'm going to be positive no matter what. And possibly writing down goals for yourself of what you can do and what you want to be able to change. There was a movie that we saw a while back. It's called Fireproof, and I think it was some Baptist that made the movie, and I really ended up liking it. I remember watching it with him, and he just kind of rolled his eyes like, oh my gosh, whatever. But in the movie, they were constantly fighting in it, and the husband and wife ended up getting to the point where they slept in different beds, and they both took off their wedding rings. And not that I'm judging anybody for this, but I'm just telling you about what the movie was about and what I got from it. And in the movie, the husband ends up reaching out to his dad, and he says, hey, I'm ready to divorce her. I can't stand her. You know, she's ungrateful. She doesn't care. She's prideful. And he was able to come up really, really easily all of the stuff that he couldn't stand about his wife. And the wife would go to work and she would complain about to her friends all of the stuff that she could not stand about her husband. And of course they would agree with her, which, you know, doesn't help and everything, because it just continues to fire the fuel the fire of anger against her spouse and everything. But the thing that the dad told this husband is, have you tried serving her? And he's like, why in the world would I want to try serving her when she treats me like crap? And he says, this is something I had to do with your mom. He says, I have a book where I wrote down 40 days of different things that I did for her. And so in the movie, he continues to start doing it. You know, he starts out with some ugly flowers and just kind of a pitiful dinner that, you know, he made, and she ends up not caring about any of it and talks bad about him still to her friends. And so he's getting frustrated because he's doing everything that his dad has told him to do, and yet she's not appreciating it and not caring about it. And he keeps calling his dad and says, she's not changing, I'm just gonna quit. What is it that I'm supposed to do? And the dad says, you're not putting your all into it, you're not putting your heart into it, you know, you're not being prayerful or whatever. And so the son continues to be so prideful and angry, and he wasn't doing it with his heart or anything like that. And so it made it super, super hard. And so what I was able to relate to that movie is, if I'm hoping and wanting for something, I've got to do my part to be able to, and not because I want to receive something back or need something back, but to be the best person that I can be for my spouse, but first for myself. And so when I go to counseling with our relationship and things like that, I've got to be willing and be open to take whatever it is for the counselor to tell us and be willing to apply that to myself, be willing to do the homework she gives me, and do it because I want to be happy and I want a happy marriage. Not going into it thinking, okay, we're going into this because he's the one with the problem, he's the one that needs to change. I mean, I let her focus on that because our counselor does a great job at gearing Jake where he needs to be and kind of opening up his eyes. And even if you're not doing counseling or whatever, but, you know, counseling with your pastor or whoever it is you go through and stuff is a great way to be able to focus on where you need to be in your marriage, instead of giving up, because most things can be fixed. It's a matter of wanting it bad enough. And even if you feel like you're giving 98% and you feel like they're only giving 2%, that means that there's still 2% that you can do yourself to be able to make yourself give 100%. And then just pray that if it be thy will, that, you know, he will be able to be 100% himself too. I'm so grateful that we got ourselves to the point where my husband got himself to the point where he felt like we could go and get counseling on this. At first, for a while, I'd have to say I was prideful about it. And so when we went in and she started talking to him, I was thinking, yeah, I knew it. It was all him. It's what he needed to do. And So she did his trauma therapy with him and everything. And then she looks at me when he gets all done with it and everything. I mean, weeks and months worth of it that he did, that he was on the stove, he was on the burner, he was in the limelight of having to have things taken care of and fixed. She looks at me and says, "Okay, it's your turn, Lisa. It's your turn to be on that hot burner. You're the one that we need to focus on now." And I said, "I just can't do that. I just can't relive all the traumatic things I've gone through. What is it even going to do to help our marriage? Like, now that he's fine and everything's fixed, the marriage is fixed." And she's like, "Okay, whatever you say. You can continue sitting in that corner, continuing to have the same anxieties and fears as you do, or we can take care of what's causing those fear and anxieties, because it's not your husband. It goes a lot farther and beyond where it's at." And so this was something that I have avoided for years because I didn't want to have to relive any of these painful, awful things. But, you know, I always say you can't have a party in a dirty house, and so she cleaned up that house for both of us, made sure that our minds, our bodies, and spirits were completely clear and clean of any trauma or fear or upset. Doesn't mean that we're healed or that everything's going to be perfect and easy from here on out. It just means that we have more room to be able to feel good feelings and thoughts and be able to move forward in a positive direction, in a positive way. So my suggestion for you, and what has helped us and what we're doing, is, you know, make sure that you make time to go on a weekly date with your spouse, even if you don't have the money to go out to dinner and a movie, because that can get expensive. Go for a walk with that spouse, go for a drive, go to a park and just kind of sit together, make a picnic together. Make this important, make this a priority, not a goal, but a priority, and make sure that it gets done. Some of us have spouses that work nonstop, and if that's the case, you can go above and beyond in other ways by writing a simple note to your spouse and leaving it in their vehicle, or making them lunch for the day, or sending them text messages, letting them know that you're thinking of them. Things like that can easily soften the heart of somebody if it's done with real intent, real reasoning, and done for quite a while. Because like in that movie, he did it almost, I would say, almost to the 40th day, and his wife was just continuing to push him away. And in that movie, she finally gets to the point, because he finally lets down his guard and his pride and his anger, and, you know, he becomes religious again and whatever. But he gets to the point where he's doing it because he wants to, not because his dad wanted him to do it. And so they end up being able to make their marriage work, and they're happy again and everything. And so it doesn't mean you're gonna have an eternity of happiness. It doesn't mean there aren't gonna be some bumps and rocks that get thrown at you, or temptations or things like that you know, kind of mess things up. But it all has to do with where you yourself individually are at, how much you're willing to put into it, and how badly you want something. Because any of these type of relationships, no matter what it is, no matter what's been done or how badly that person has hurt you, it's possible to be able to get in a place where you need to be healed, be able to feel secure, know where to build your foundation, how to build it, and do the things that you need to do to get yourself into that position to be able to serve your spouse. Because, you know, killing them with kindness is about the best that you can do. And they can continue pushing you away, but after a while that person's going to give up, because kindness isn't painful, it's joyful and it's nice. So I'll continue posting our updates. We're doing fine. We still have some little knots and things that she has to figure out how to untie and help, but luckily I'd have to say the majority of the issues that we struggled with, learning how to communicate, that's getting so much better. learning how to be willing, and this is silly, to take turns on doing things he likes versus the things I like, going back and forth on that, because you have to be even on allowing each other things that make you happy and not being one that just takes. And some people have to learn how to receive too, and that's been a hard thing for him, is learning how to receive something back. When we think about going to restaurants or whatever, I will say, where is it that you want to go? And he'll be like, anywhere you want, babe. And so she's having to work with him on that, like, no, Jake, you have to get to the point where you say, oh, I would like to be able to go to this place. Learning how to not have expectations, but to have agreements between the two of you. If you sit there and you expect that person to do something for your birthday or say something to you when they get home from work and they don't do any of those, they're called expectations. And so many times when we expect something and that person doesn't know that, and then we get angry and upset, those are so great at starting arguments or disagreements and fights. And so she has taught us that instead of having expectations and expecting them to do something that they don't know that you're wanting them to do or think or whatever it is, you need to come up with agreements. Like, I would love it that when you came home from work, instead of sitting out in the vehicle for a while and then going to doing yard work without saying hi to me, would you mind coming up to me first the moment you get home, come and give me a kiss and a hug and say hi to me and let me know you're home? And then when the other spouse goes, oh yeah, I can do that, then there might be a reason for you getting frustrated and upset if they don't follow through with it, because it's become an agreement rather than an unknown expectation. So hopefully these things, can kind of help you, and I guess we'll kind of live through it first so that you can kind of learn from our mistakes. And I hope that you guys have a good night, and I pray for all y'all's marriages and relationships and stuff, because it is so blasted hard out there with getting so super busy, or getting to the point where you're getting frustrated and angry and upset because things aren't going the way that you're wanting, the way that sometimes life happens and you don't feel appreciated or loved or anything like that, and it kind of directs your attention a different direction or towards somebody else. These things, you guys, are not worth breaking a marriage up. These marriages are so important. These kids, our kids, rely so much on being able to have both parents. I see what it did to my husband not being able to have both parents growing up, and it completely destroyed him. I would have to say most of my kids' friends aren't even married. And I remember back in the day when I was younger and I was a kid, most parents back then, like 20-something years ago, still were in marriages, and people wanted to get married and they wanted to be able to be together a long time. Back when my grandparents were first married, the generation gap between that, my grandparents are in their 90s, they're still alive, they're celebrating their 70-something wedding anniversary. They got married at like 16, 17 years old. You guys, those people know how to continue having a marriage, and they're doing it still in love, and it's so amazing and neat to be able to go and spend time with them, and I love to sit there and ask them what their input is on marriage and how they've been able to keep together for this amount of time. And they always giggle and they love talking about their memories, and I'm sure they still have arguments even at 90-something years old, but they have a lot of years behind them, and they have been able to figure out how to get past those hurdles and those hard times. I mean, you had the Great Depression back then that was super hard, and they've gone through tons of things where they struggled with money super, super bad, and they were farmers. And they always talked about how they made sure to never stay angry with each other, and that they apologized quickly. And that's something our counselors talk to us about too, is don't ever let fights go for a very long time. Learn how to clean it up quickly and be willing to apologize and to accept, when you're doing something wrong. Because when you say something bad or something mean, it's super hard for that person to forget it, especially us women. But we can break the chain of marriages not lasting out there. We can make it possible to have strong, healthy, happy ones. And just because your parents possibly might have gotten a divorce or didn't make it, or maybe still together and always fighting and not happy, doesn't mean that that's what's going to happen to you. You have the decision and the choice and free agency to be able to put into a relationship whatever it is that you're willing to put into it. And don't ever expect to receive something back. For when we don't expect something, that's when we're not going to be angry or down when we don't get something. It's those expectations that just absolutely kill us. So do your very best at making things work. Do your very best at serving your spouse. And I put a challenge out there to you guys, and I will do it I'll do it the same, that starting tomorrow for a whole entire week, even if it just absolutely kills you to do this. Sometimes it does for me, but to ask each other, if you're in a place where you can with your spouse, say, hey, let's do a little game this week. This is what our counselor had us do. And it was kind of funny and kind of fun. We asked each other, hey, what type of romantic thing, what would be romantic to you that I could do today? And guess what my husband said? Oh, he wanted me to do my most least favorite thing. He's like, having the dishes done in the kitchen, because there was quite a few that day. He says, having that done would be romantic to me. And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? Are you being silly and funny? And then I just stopped right there. And so then and he's like, and having a candle lit when I come home so it smells all nice and it's cozy, and having really pretty music with a clean kitchen. And I was like, oh, I have to keep that promise. I promised him I would do it. We made an agreement. Wasn't an expectation. We agreed to do it. So then I sat there and I was like, okay, I'm expecting him to do something for me, which is wrong. Don't do that. And so the day went on. He never asked me what it was that I wanted. And I started getting pissed off and angry in my mind. I was like, this is so unfair. I'm sitting here doing these disgusting dishes that have been sitting there for a couple days, and he's not doing a dang thing. So I messaged him kind of a snotty message, and I was like, hey, you promised me that you would do what Becky told us to do, and you didn't do it. And he's like, excuse me, you haven't given me time. I said, oh, yes, I did. I've given you all day. Well, the funny thing happens is we get off the phone a few minutes later, the doorbell rings, and the flower patch guy is at the door with a big, huge bouquet of flowers. And I'm like, oh, I feel so bad. I feel so horrible that I sat there and downed on him, my expectations, We didn't agree on something, but I felt bad about it. So my goal for you this week is to do something like that. Whether it's a known agreement with your spouse, like, hey, let's do this game. What type of things can we do together that you would love me to do, and vice versa. Or if you're not in a place where you and your spouse are really at great talking communication with each other, then do it on your own. Think about the things, make a list of things that you know that your spouse used to love when you were dating. And the possibility of him still loving that is still there, because obviously that's what made he or she fall in love with you. So do it because it makes you happy and because you want to see a smile on their face. And if they don't respond, continue doing it, because you've spent a while being the opposite. Spend a while being the new you, and be interested in being able to see how that really can actually change your relationship with your spouse or your significant other or whatever. But good luck on it, and we'll check back, and I'd love to hear your input or what type of things you guys love doing or what works for you, because we always have room for change and doing better and being positive. Good night, guys.